Hello and welcome to Inside Politics. I'm Anastasiya Lavrina, and tonight we delve into the crisis that has erupted with unprecedented intensity. The Israel-Iran conflict, which has now escalated into direct military action. In the early hours of June 13, Israel launched a large-scale preemptive strike on Iran, codenamed Operation Rising Lion. The operation targeted key nuclear facilities and military installations across Iran. Among those reportedly killed were top Iranian officials. This escalation follows months of heightened tensions, with Iran enriching uranium to near weapons-grade levels and rejecting a US-led nuclear deal proposal. In retaliation, Iran launched hundreds of drones at Israel, marking a significant intensification of hostilities. While the immediate focus is on the Middle East, the ramifications of this conflict are being felt far beyond. In this program, the South Caucasus finds itself at the crossroads. For Azerbaijan, Armenia and Georgia, proximity to a destabilizing flashpoint presents both strategic risks and urgent recalculations. Might escalation with Israel spills across borders, affecting trade routes, energy corridors, or diplomatic alignments? Tonight, we'll explore the implications of the Israel-Iran escalation for the South Caucasus, examining how regional powers are responding and what this means for the future stability of the area. Joining me now is Matthew Bryza, former United States diplomat, and Melih Demirtaş, academic and researcher. Dear experts, warm welcome to the program. And Matthew, if you don't mind, let me start with you. How significant is this escalation between Israel and Iran? Was it predictable?
Well, it's totally predictable. I mean, President Trump has been saying for the last few days that war could happen. He hopes it doesn't happen. He advised against it. And it's been clear to me for a long time that Israel was planning something like this. I mean, after they took out, destroyed much of Iran's air defenses back in October, there's a huge debate in Israel about whether or not now was the time for Israel to try to take advantage and then destroy some of, or as much of as possible, of Iran's nuclear production capabilities as possible. So it wasn't a surprise. The timing was, I mean, there was a bit of a deception operation. Netanyahu said he was going to go on a vacation over the weekend before his son's wedding on Monday, and President Trump seemed to kind of play along when he was saying, you know, there could be an attack, but I hope there isn't, when now we know that Netanyahu had informed President Trump last Monday that the attack was going to happen, today. So I think both Netanyahu and Trump colluded, perhaps, to try to create deception and a sense of surprise of when the attack would actually happen.
It was surprise, and it was predictable. Melih, Israel has framed the strikes as necessary to hold Iran's nuclear ambitions. Do you believe the timing was driven by security imperatives?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Lavrina, also for this program at such a critical time. And yes, we heard the same terms, I mean, preemptive strike. This is one of the important terms of maybe the second millennia. When we start the second millennia, 2001, with the son, Bush, I mean, George W. Bush, after 9/11, all of the world countries, I think, start to be shocked more and more with this word, preemptive strike. Especially the realist international relations theories, they are using this term after that date much more, I mean, their textbooks, in their diplomacy, I mean, sessions, or maybe, I don't know, preparation courses for diplomats. But I think Israel now used it in a much more harsh, in a much more maybe surprise manner, as you said. And Iran is not in a ready position, as also the other valuable guest said, that in a situation where Mr. Trump maybe had some promises, I mean, just in the last weeks, in the last month, also Mr. Netanyahu and the Israel cabinet did not give any signals for such an attack. Of course, the other night, I mean, the one day before, we heard some, of course, Trump-style words from the United States president that something can happen, but such an attack, I think, can stimulate something more in humanitarian causes in the world. I mean, in the region, first of all, but after that, in the world. Because every of such kind of attack shakes the international law, shakes, first of all, the United Nations system, and shakes every country. Think about Russia. Think about the other countries. What they have done after 2001. We cannot accept, and we cannot maybe close our eyes to what's happened now in front of us.
Well, indeed, it's actually already attracts the attention of the whole world, the reaction of the global powers. Matthew, Iran's drone retaliation was swift and massive at the same time. Do you see this conflict remaining contained, or is there a real risk of spilling into a broader regional war?
Well, it depends on how much Iran both wishes to and is able to retaliate. Iran did launch 100 drones, but they had no impact on Israel. This is sort of a very unusual moment for Iran, unprecedented in my lifetime, whereby the retaliatory threats that Iran was usually able to make are no longer there. So it's announced that it's not able to send any more drones to Russia, right, to continue Russia's war on Ukraine, because it needs them at home. As I said, the 100 that it launched had no impact. And Iran's militias that it supports, Hezbollah and Hamas, are decimated by Israel. Iran no longer has its positions in Syria either. So Iran's ability to escalate are much more limited than in the past. What Iran could do, though, it could strike at U.S. forces in the Middle East. It could strike at other Gulf states, oil production and export facilities, could close the Strait of Hormuz, which would have a big impact on the global economy. But then Iran knows that it would face economic strangulation. And the information I was just seeing just now, I was reading while we were getting ready, is that it doesn't appear that the Iranian people are rallying around the Iranian flag this time in response to Israel's attack. So it seems like a very precarious situation right now for Iran. One that I've never seen in my life with regard to Iran, where Iran's options to retaliate are very limited.
Matthew, one additional question to you. You mentioned the United States. Therefore, we cannot exclude the fact that probably there will be definitely there will be disagreements between Iran and the United States on the situation and the escalation between Iran and Israel. Therefore, should we expect any kind of clashes in between of Iran and United States on the territory of the third governments? Countries?
No, I don't expect them. As has been announced, President Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, was scheduled to be in Oman on Sunday for the latest round of nuclear negotiations. Now, whether that was sincere or part of the deception campaign I mentioned before, I don't know. But Trump, well, what he said, President Trump said it himself today. He said Iran would be, best to take the message that it has been struck, and it could be struck much worse. But now is the time then to get to the negotiating table and reach an agreement with the U.S. He also said, Trump said, I had given 60 days for there to be an agreement between the U.S. and Iran. Iran decided not to agree to the proposal on the table, and so Israel launched its attack on day 61. So that sounds to me like Trump doesn't expect or want a military clash with Iran, and he would rather get back to negotiations on the nuclear deal. But it's not realistic to imagine Iran would want to negotiate with the United States for a little while at least.
Indeed, that's very interesting. Melih, what's your assessment of the South Caucasus as a potential spillover zone for Iran-Israel conflict?
Yes, Iran's influence is maybe for issue for thousands of years. We must accept that Israel has some, of course, cultural backgrounds or some historical backgrounds with every of its kinds of attack. Maybe also Mr. Netanyahu's left maybe explanations and declarations. These are always full of maybe some religious or cultural beliefs, but the equal cultural or religious maybe spillover effect, as you said, is also due to the Iran's area of influence. I mean, in Caucasus, first of all, also in our area, I mean, Anatolia, Middle East, Caucasus, even the Central Asian states, they are all somehow connected with, of course, Iran's some ideology, some culture, some economic zone. And first of all, we must think about that, what can be done for not losing, first of all this Iranian spirit. I can call it spirit because Iranian spirit is not a spirit of just 40, 50 years of Iran after Islamic Revolution. No, we can say that Iranian influence area or Iranian people's ideas, what we need for this Eurasian maybe integration process. Also, we must count on this effect of Russian or Chinese maybe foreign policy experts. And I think that they start to declare some important words after this afternoon. And we will see that what will these other world powers will say about this issue, I mean this Eurasian, especially stability factor. For the South Caucasus, we must be careful, first of all, as Azerbaijan, for Turkey, and now Armenia. Maybe it can create a stability zone after, of course, very military, maybe victorious terms of Azerbaijan, after this Karabakh victories, and of course, after the projects which we can envisage with, for example, with Zengezur and other projects. But now, that doesn't mean that we can lose or we cannot maybe, again, close our eyes to all this Iranian, influence or Iranian area of this diplomacy or historical legacy. No. First of all, Israel and United States also must be on the table to speak about this Israel aggressiveness, first of all, because it is not diplomacy. We must talk about it. All this, important first of just shots and just that in one or 2 hours. How can it be? We are not in the Middle Ages more. I'm so sorry to tell that, but diplomacy is not this, or world politics is not this. And Turkey, as I think is an important regional actor now, cannot, of course, can say yes to such an atmosphere with all its men. I mean, even if it's an important ally in the NATO pact.
Well, Matthew, energy infrastructure usually becomes a strategic target in regional conflicts. So what are the realistic risks for the South Caucasus pipelines, and how prepared the countries to respond in case of any threat?
I think there's virtually no risk. I mean, okay, Israel does receive between 30 and 40% of its crude oil supplies from Azerbaijan via the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline. So if there was a full-scale regional war, then BTC could be threatened. But as I was just describing, Iran really doesn't have the ability to mount a major retaliatory strike, even against Israel at this point. Oh, and I forgot to add that many of its military commanders have been killed in the strike by Israel. So the focus for Iran now is Israel. And if Iran wants to broaden the war, it would do it in the way that I already talked about, which would be to attack oil facilities in the Gulf and maybe close the Strait of Hormuz. And down the road, if the tensions really escalated, maybe attack some U.S. military forces in the region. So there's not enough. There aren't enough assets or resources for Iran to worry about the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline now. But if the war went on for a long time, if Iran was able to rebuild its arsenal and muster enough military strength, well, it would maybe feel threatened by Azerbaijan because of rumors that are out in the international media that, an Azerbaijani airfield was somehow used by Israel. There are rumors, who knows if they're true, of other assistance given to Israel for its military operations. Frankly, I find those hard to believe, but, these are being talked about in Iran, which would mean maybe a reason for Iran to feel some hostility toward Azerbaijan. And Israel in recent hours has struck Tabriz, so closer to Azerbaijan. But I think, to be honest, as much as I care about the South Caucasus, in this conflict, it's an afterthought. The theater of battle is Iran and Israel, and then maybe the Gulf.
Melih, what about Russia? Russia still has its own strategic interest in the region, and it supports Iran's in some of its action, not against Israel, but overall support its stance on some political issues when it comes to the regional and global issues. Therefore, do you expect Russia to be involved in this conflict?
Actually, interestingly, just 1 week before, I think there's was a constructive dialogue and telephone diplomacy between Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump. I mean, one of the issues in the basket, I mean, is also about this nuclear, of course, dialogue, and also the Iranian issue, of course, the Ukrainian case. And Mr. Putin skillfully, again, is an important skillful statesman and diplomat, I think, for more than 30 years, put this Iranian issue to basket, I mean, with the maybe same equality with the Ukrainian issue. The important situations, of course, is great for Russia. And somehow, after all this, turmoil started in Ukraine, we also see just 1.5 years after this Palestinian issue also in the Middle East occurred, also maybe in favor of Israel. We must not forget about it. Because all this, events, all this turmoil or catastrophic, crisis, which really cost thousands of civilian lives. We cannot forget about it. Mr. Other reliable guest said that, yes, it's an important game on the table, but it's not about the table. It's about just thousands of civilians. Come on, it's in Ukraine, it's now Palestinian. We just forgot Palestine. Israel just maybe legitimized all these actions with maybe atrocities of Iran's government. Yes, Iran government has important regime problem, an important democratic problem. The people, of course, demanded some more rights, but of course, we must not forget also this embargo issue. All this embargo and economic, of course, sanctions, they killed many people in Iran too. And now we cannot forget about that. Israel maybe uses all this maybe suitable atmosphere in favor of this maybe realist interest with these attacks maybe. But first of all, Russia with the crisis of Ukraine, and now after we are forgetting after a month maybe or after 2 months, this Palestinian genocide, I will call it. I'm so sorry to the postmodern genocide. The modern genocide, Second World War, and this postmodern one is now still happening. And now we can say that Russia must be, again, critical actor, with Mr. Putin. But first of all, of course, the Ukrainian issue somehow also connected with, of course, Israeli maybe intelligence or Israeli maybe military, maybe involvement in this crisis. We don't know still it is secret maybe dialogues between Ukrainian or Israeli authorities still. But still, Russia is a critical actor, which we can think about that it can have the constructive role actually upon Iran. Thanks to other multilateral platforms, thanks to BRICS, thanks to other maybe platforms with China also, in cooperation with China, I can say that they must maybe bring together all these actors to the diplomacy table, not maybe the other really will guess that to the war table. This must be also included also in the Turkey or Azerbaijan diplomacy corridors, I believe so.
Matthew, coming back to the situation in the United States, the 6th round of US-Iran nuclear talks was expected to take place this weekend. Do you believe diplomacy is dead for now when it comes to the possible agreements in the nuclear deal in between the two countries? Or could this strike be used as a leverage for a new, more urgent negotiation talk?
Yeah, well, as I've already mentioned, for the immediate future, I think probably Iran's not going to feel it is in a capacity to negotiate further with the United States. But as President Trump said, he's looking at this Israeli strike as the use of military force as a tool of diplomacy. Like it or not, military force has always been a tool of diplomacy. And the great theorist, the Prussian political military theorist, von Clausewitz, said war is the continuation of politics by other means. Now, Lenin turned that famous saying on his head and said that politics is the continuation of war by other means. But the point is that military action is a diplomatic tool as a way to shape the space, shape the reality for the political negotiations and talks that ultimately are the endpoint of diplomacy in terms of finding a political outcome that's mutually acceptable to both sides. So what Trump said today was that. He said, hopefully, Iran will see Israel's use of force as a sign that Iran should have taken the agreement that's on the table, but we still want to negotiate, and we're ready to do it. So I think the negotiations will begin again. But again, not until the physical and political dust settles in Iran, as the Iranian leadership, military leadership, is many of its members have been killed. and the political leadership is in shock. And when you're in shock from a military attack, that's not the time to negotiate. But later it will come.
That's interesting, Melih. What about European Union and European countries? Do you expect Europe to be more active in the future negotiation in between of Iran, Israel, or any third parties? Even Europe is being included in the negotiation when it comes to the nuclear future of Iran. Therefore, particularly now, what do you expect from Europe?
We believe so. I mean, for the liberal order, for the peaceful order of international politics, many people once, trusted the European diplomacy, maybe much more. But after this maybe crisis atmosphere, starting with maybe Ukrainian crisis, also this is Palestine, I think this unilateral support even to, Israeli maybe mass killings to Palestine. Maybe some legitimacy factor is also pushing some, limits to European diplomacy. I think Mr. Macron, the French president and maybe the new president of Germany, Friedrich Merz, I think they can have some this coalition issue for maybe new talkings with Iran. But after, of course, Brexit, we cannot think about, of course, some United Kingdom. Also, as we see that in this Russian case, also in many diplomacy area, it's like the scapegoat of this history. I'm so sorry to tell again, but British diplomacy is losing maybe ground in many fields. But still, the European ideal, so European diplomacy also symbolizes, especially after the Second World War, somehow this liberal international order and international law. And we need them. Yes, we need, this French or German and other Spanish or Italian initiative diplomacy. And they can maybe have some positive effect on Iranian diplomacy, because Iranian diplomacy has an important, of course, problem, an important gap with the United States ideology. You cannot fill this gap so easily. Of course, this has important reasons because of history, near history. Because of this, we need Europe and European diplomacy. And as you said that, yes, for the new round of talks, we hope, of course, we don't know what will be the next move from Iran. But still, we must believe to this spirit of diplomacy.
Matthew, and one more question I have for today. As you already mentioned, you're saying that Iran doesn't have enough capacities and it's incapable now to have a proper response to what can lead actually to the escalation and a real war between two countries, Iran and Israel. But officials in Iran are saying that they will respond. And in case it happens, what will be the reaction of the United States? If the United States is going to prevent any escalation in the future, support Israel or something else?
Yeah, well, first of all, I should be very precise. I'm not saying that Iran does not have the ability to retaliate. I'm saying it doesn't have good options. So what it could do, if it really wants to escalate, it appears the drone strikes aren't working. And it's running out of ballistic missiles. And its ballistic missile production capacity was destroyed already by Israel last October. So what Iran could do is what I mentioned. It could strike oil facilities in the Gulf. It could close the Strait of Hormuz to oil exports and LNG exports. 30% of the world's crude oil and oil products are exported through the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of LNG is as well. So JP Morgan and others estimate that if Iran were to attack those oil facilities and or close the Strait of Hormuz, you could see the oil price increase up to, from now, it's spiked up to the low 70s right now from where it was in the 60s, could go as high as $130 per barrel. And if that happens, and President Trump will feel a lot of pressure with regard to his domestic political agenda, he's promised to bring prices down. And so in that situation, it's conceivable that the United States would try to force open the Strait of Hormuz and could lead to a clash with the Iranian naval vessels. But I find that highly unlikely. Trump does not want to fight a major war, and I don't think Iran is going to strike oil facilities. I think the Iranian political leadership had to make a very tough statement about retaliation. And I think in the end, it's not going to be able to do very much that's effective, because closing the Strait of Hormuz or striking its Gulf neighbors' oil facilities will be economically suicidal for Iran. So I actually think Iran won't be able to do, will choose not to do very much in retaliation.
Well, dear expert, thank you. Thank you so much for joining Inside Politics.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
As the conflict between Israel and Iran intensifies, its ripple effects are being closely watched across many regions, including the South Caucasus. This region stands at a strategic crossroads where alliances, borders, and energy flows are all in motion. What happens next could redefine the balance of power, not just in our neighborhood, but far beyond. At Inside Politics, we will continue to follow the implications of this conflict on diplomacy, security, and the future of regional cooperation. I'm Anastasiya Lavrina. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay informed, and see you next time.